Good Shabbos, everyone. So I don't envy teenagers today. When I was growing up, comparisons had limits. You may compare yourself to your kids, or you may have compared yourself to kids in your neighborhood. And then when you were at home, it mostly stopped. But today, comparison never seems to stop. Instead, of course, it fits in your pocket. It wakes you up in the morning and goes to sleep with you at night. You just don't see how your friends are doing. You see how everyone seems to be doing. Where they're traveling, what they're wearing, how popular they appear, how together their lives seem to be. Everyone's social media feeds are like highlight reels with no context. It can make all of us, no matter our age, feel like we're always behind, even when we're doing just fine. And when you're 12 or 13 or 14 years old, and you're still trying to figure out who you are, that can be a lot to carry. And that kind of constant comparison can do something to us. Now, it turns out the Torah understood this long before social media ever existed. Because as we read this morning, the Ten Commandments, after prohibitions against actions like murder and theft, it ends with something very surprising. Lo takmod, do not covet. Not an action, but an emotion. The only one of the Ten Commandments that legislates an inner feeling, not an external act. Why? Why does the Ten Commandments waste time prohibiting an emotion? Now, on a practical level, it may make sense. If I envy what you have, I'm more tempted to break another commandment, to lie to get what you have, to steal from you, or to betray someone's trust to get what I'm envious of. Because envy never stays private. It often leaks into our behavior. It's like a gateway sin that almost always leads to something tragic. That's why when it comes to jealousy, what we think inside is just as important as any outward behavior. In fact, the great 18th century Rabbi, Vilna Gaon, said that this final commandment is the whole basis of the Torah. Because jealousy rarely remains a passing thought. It repeats itself, turning comparison into fixation. We find ourselves again and again comparing our own seemingly ordinary life against someone else's more exciting one. As King Solomon said years ago, envy rots the bones. Because envy doesn't just sour our mood. It erodes our inner stability. When our sense of worth is built on comparison, something essential inside begins to weaken. Because envy doesn't hurt the person you're jealous of. It shrinks the person who feels it. Aristotle defined envy as the pain caused by the good fortune of others. How right he was. Because as we know, there will always be someone else with more possessions, more talents, more material possessions. So for jealous people, it's very hard to be happy. Because envy destroys our ability to enjoy the blessings that we do have. But it's not easy. As much as we try not to be jealous, it's hard not to be. Ever since the time of Cain and Abel, it's human nature. And especially, and all the more so, in our social media age. The Talmud states that everyone is jealous of another's success. Centuries later, Sigmund Freud, in his studies of the human psyche, came to the same conclusion, realizing that jealousy is part of our human nature. Maybe that's why it's one of the Ten Commandments. And various rabbis and scholars of the Jewish tradition over the centuries have offered advice. How do we fight the jealousy that is part of our human nature? Today I want to offer one strategy that has often helped me. Now, our Jewish tradition often presents a realistic, practical way of life. And so the Jewish tradition actually offers a distinction. Yes, there's destructive envy that 10th commandment prohibits, the kind that makes our lives feel small, that leads to resentment and bitterness. But our tradition actually offers another type, an actual constructive form of jealousy. To teach that constructive form of jealousy, the rabbis offer an interesting analogy. They actually imagine two students sitting in the same school. They're about the same age, the same background, the same teachers. They even start studying the same materials at the same time. One of the students, he struggles. He reads the text slowly. He gets stuck. He feels frustrated. And then he looks up and he sees that the other student across from him is fluent already, confident, already turning the page, making the teacher happy. Now, there are two ways this moment can go. One way is destructive envy. He could think, why him? Why not me? I'll never be that good. And slowly, quietly, his motivation drains away and it turns to bitterness. But there's another possibility, the rabbis say. He watches the other student and he thinks, if he can do this, maybe I can too. He leans in a little more. He studies a little harder. He asks an extra question. He stays longer than he planned. Not because he wants to take anything away from the other student, but because he's inspired by what's possible. That's not jealousy that resents someone else's success. It's jealousy that says, show me what I can become. Because the rabbis understood something very wise about human behavior. We don't grow only by looking inward. Sometimes we grow by looking sideways, as long as what we feel doesn't turn into bitterness, but into aspiration. That's why this teaching may help us. Because our children are comparing themselves constantly. The question isn't whether comparison will happen, it will. The question is what we help them do with that comparison. Do they scroll online and feel smaller? Or do they notice excellence, real excellence, and say, teach me how to get there? Judaism never demands that we shut off desire. It asks us to refine it. In fact, according to tradition, it's called kinat sofrim tarbe chokmah. It's when jealousy becomes curiosity, when comparison becomes motivation, when admiration replaces resentment. Because that kind of jealousy, that constructive form, doesn't shrink a person. It helps them grow, to learn harder, to reach higher, to be inspired to be better people. Yes, there is a crucial distinction. Destructive envy asks, why don't I have what they have? Healthy jealousy says, what can I learn from them? Same comparison, but a completely different outcome. And it takes a lot of maturity, confidence, and satisfaction to look at others this way. It's much easier to look at others with contempt. Think about our own lives. When we see our neighbor drive down the street in that brand new, flashy sports car with all the extras that we wish we could afford, our first thoughts are probably, that guy's such a jerk. He doesn't deserve that car. There's no way he makes that much money. And if he does, I hope he loses his job. We may be tempted to go off and criticize our neighbor for buying such an expensive car, but the whole time, in the back of our minds, we wish we had one too. So in the end, maybe we feel even worse. Destructive envy only destroys us. But healthy jealousy maybe can motivate us for the better. We see the new sports car and maybe we think, I know my neighbor works hard. Perhaps he deserves it. Can I at least be happy for him? And maybe if I work hard and luck goes my way, if I choose, I too can buy something similar. Because our tradition always says, can we use whatever envious feelings that may come up inside for the good? Can we consider whether the person you envy deserves his level of success and whether there may be a good reason you're not there yet? Maybe someone else has accomplished more because he works harder or more effectively than you do, or he's friendlier to people, and so they respond better to him. Judaism says, instead of allowing yourself to wallow in self-pity, consider whether there is something you can learn from more successful people that might improve your life. Sometimes envy can be a good thing if it inspires us to improve our lives for the better. Yes, unfortunately, social media often trains us and our precious teens in passive envy, to look and compare. So we just feel bad and do nothing about it except grow in resentment, become less confident, feel bitter. But Judaism insists on an active and positive response. Bless someone else's success. Learn from it. Let it clarify what matters to you. Then build your own version, excelling in what works for you, to what you and only you can do. Judaism doesn't say don't notice what others have. It says don't let what others have steal your joy or your integrity. And then let it push you in positive ways to work harder, make a larger difference in the community, and to enjoy your life and what you have been blessed with even more. One more thought. Perhaps our job as parents and rabbis and teachers is not to eliminate jealousy for our teenagers. That's an impossible mission, almost as impossible as getting them off social media. Rather, it's to help our young translate jealousy into something that can make them better. It helps when we model contentment, when we speak gratitude out loud, when we celebrate others without self-comparison. Can we show our teens and the young of our community that we do feel fortunate about what we do have? For example, do they see us showing excitement for our home, no matter how big it is? Or do they hear us often complain that so-and-so has a larger home? Do our children often see us celebrating what we do have? Our cars, our jewelry, our furniture, our vacations, no matter how nice or fancy they may be? Or do they often hear us complain that we never have enough, that so-and-so always seems to have more? If we are often obsessed as parents and teachers that we don't have as much as someone else has, what do we think our children will do as they get older? Yes, Judaism says we should, of course, always raise children to want more out of life, to work harder, to be better students, to be more successful, to grow and inspire, to be successful in their studies, in their careers, in their lives, not out of destructive jealousy, but instead learning from others in positive ways how to get the most out of life. What a better world it would be. Shabbat Shalom.